Have you ever finished watching a video, reading a book, or studying for hours, and then realized you barely remember any of it a week later? You're not alone. And no, your memory probably isn't bad. The real problem is something most people never realize. Learning is not the same as remembering. You can spend 10 hours studying and still retain almost nothing. Meanwhile, someone else studies for 2 hours and remembers most of it. So, what's the difference? It's not intelligence. It's not talent. And it's definitely not having a photographic memory. It's how they use their brain while learning. Here's something surprising. Your brain is not designed to store everything it sees. In fact, it does the opposite. It constantly deletes information. Why? Because storing everything would be inefficient. Your brain is always asking one question. Is this important enough to keep? And if the answer feels like no, it gets thrown away. That means if you want to remember something, you must convince your brain that it matters. So how do you do that? Let's start with the biggest mistake almost everyone makes. Passive learning. This includes rereading notes, highlighting entire pages, watching tutorial after tutorial. It feels productive. But feeling productive and actually learning are very different things. Imagine watching someone do push-ups. You understand what they're doing. But will your muscles grow? Of course not. Because understanding something passively is not the same as training it. Memory works similarly. Your brain remembers what it has to work for, not what it casually observes. That brings us to one of the most powerful learning techniques ever studied: active recall. It sounds complicated, but it's simple. Instead of repeatedly looking at information, close the book, close the notes, and try to recall what you just learned from memory, even if you struggle. Especially if you struggle. That struggle matters, because every time your brain searches for information, it strengthens the pathway to that memory. Think of memory like a path through grass. Walk it once, and it's barely visible. Walk it again and again. And soon, there's a clear trail. Recalling information creates that trail. Reading alone often doesn't. But there's another problem. Even if you remember something today, you'll forget much of it tomorrow. This is normal. There's a famous pattern called the forgetting curve. After learning something once, memory drops fast, sometimes dramatically within days, unless you revisit it. That's why cramming feels effective in the short term but fails later. You may remember everything tonight and forget most of it next week. So, what works better? Spacing. Instead of reviewing something 10 times in one day, review it once today, again tomorrow, then a few days later, then a week later. This is called spaced repetition, and it works because each review happens when your brain is close to forgetting. That timing is powerful. It tells your brain, this information keeps coming back. Maybe it matters, and your brain starts preserving it. Now here's something even more interesting. The best way to know whether you truly understand something is to teach it. Try explaining what you learned to a friend, or to yourself, out loud, using simple words, no fancy jargon, no copying definitions. Just explain it like you're talking to a 12-year-old. Something strange happens when you do this. Your knowledge gets tested instantly. You notice gaps. You notice weak understanding. You notice where you're confused. And that's valuable, because confusion isn't failure. Confusion shows you exactly what still needs work. There's one more trick that dramatically improves memory: association. Your brain loves connections. Random facts are hard to remember. Connected ideas are much easier. For example, if you learn a new concept, ask questions like, what does this remind me of? How does this connect to something I already know? Why does this matter in real life? The more links you create, the easier retrieval becomes. Because memories rarely exist alone. They live inside networks, and stronger networks create stronger recall. So if you want to remember more of what you study, stop focusing only on input. Focus on retrieval. Focus on repetition over time. Focus on explanation. Focus on connection. Because memory is not built when information enters your eyes. It is built when your brain struggles, retrieves, reconnects, and uses that information. So the next time you study, don't ask, how long did I spend learning? Ask a better question. If I close everything right now, what can I still explain? That answer tells you far more than hours ever will. Because in the end, learning isn't about consuming information. It's about making information stay.